no thinking ahead. But the moment he pushed me, my body just reacted. Squabbling up is a lost art form. It is defined as having two meanings, one meaning to fight and the other to dance. But at least in our case today, we will be discussing the fist-to-fist, hand-to-hand combat meaning of the phrase squabble up. Now, this story took place at the ripe age of 12, living in Jamaica and going to primary school. Aside from folks channeling Sukuna himself into their body and getting my crush stolen from me by a max tier light skin. Speaking of that light skin, let's call him Dom. He gets important really soon. Days here were for the most part fun, unproblematic, and enjoyable. Until it wasn't. I had just gotten back from lunch and was chilling as casual, and Miss Harrison left the class for a bit and put me in charge. This is important because this is back when being in charge actually meant something. You were expected to keep the class quiet in the absence of a teacher. There was supposed to be absolutely no chatter. How was this enforced, you may ask? By the name system. How the name system worked is that you'd stand up next to the whiteboard with a marker, and if anyone in the class spoke, you were supposed to write their name down on the board. And if someone kept talking, you'd add a star each time. So when the teacher came back, they'd punish these poor folks accordingly. Sometimes the teacher would call home, sometimes they'd get points taken off an assignment, and sometimes they'd even get beaten. Now, when I went up to the board with the marker in my hand, I was low-key excited. This was my moment. I had power, I had authority, and if I'm being honest, I had a tiny bit of pettiness stored up from the last year, seeing as how I got my crush taken by a max tier light skin, Dom. So, for the first 2 to 3 minutes of class, the class is dead silent. And then of course, out of everybody else in the class, Dom starts talking. So I didn't even hesitate. I turned to the board and write his name down nice and clear in the best handwriting I could foster up at the time. Then I glanced back at him. He looks at me, already annoyed, and goes,
"Why you writing my name, bro?"
"You were talking. That's how it works." Now at this point, he could have just left it alone. He could have just taken the L, but instead, he leans back in his chair, looks dead at me, and says,
"Go suck your mother."
Everybody knows that that's not just something you casually say in Jamaica. Those are the definition of fighting words. I walk up to him, calm, and I'm like, "Yo, don't say that again." He just smirks and says,
"What you gonna do about it?"
And then he pushes me. Now, I'm not even gonna act like I had a whole plan. There was absolutely no strategy, no thinking ahead. But the moment he pushed me, my body just reacted. And I swung. Like a fairly clean punch too. I surprised myself. And right after that, I grabbed him and put him into a headlock. Like I've been waiting for this moment my whole life. Now we're stumbling around, desks moving, people yelling, and the whole class has officially turned into chaos. And at the worst possible moment, while I've got this man locked under my armpits, lo and behold, Miss Harrison walks back in. She stops at the door for a second, just staring at the scene, trying to process what she's looking at. Then her eyes of judgment land on me. The student she left in charge, the straight A student, holding another student in a headlock. What made it even worse at this point is that I was on track to become what is called head boy. Now, if you don't know, becoming head boy was a big deal. You were basically the head of the student government at your primary school. It wasn't a matter of voting by the student body like it is here in America with class presidents. A head boy is chosen from a teacher's council in coordination with the principal. And the cherry on top was that my mother was aware and took great pride in the fact that I was even being considered to be head boy. Now let me go home and tell her that her son is no longer being considered for this position because I got into a fight at school. Death by firing squad would be more merciful than what would end up happening to me.
Daniel, what's going on here?
Miss, he pushed me first.
And your solution was to put him in an headlock?
Yes.
I left you in charge of class for 5 minutes. Not a wrestling match.
My chest sank. 5 minutes. That's all it took to ruin everything in my head. Dom smirked from over my shoulder, but the smirk faltered when he saw the fury in her eyes.
Both of you sit down. And Daniel, I hope you realize how badly you just messed up.
Yes, miss. She shook her head, letting out a long, slow sigh. I'm now sitting there like, I was doing everything right. My teachers liked me, I had great grades, I was responsible. And now I'm out here fighting in class like I forgot my whole future. At the same time, I'm thinking, out of all the times she could have came back, it had to be right now. Meanwhile, Dom is over there dealing with his own consequences, which, let's just say they were a lot more physical than mine. But somehow, after all that, after all the yelling, the chaos, the headlock incident, I still became head boy. So in the end, my one and only fight didn't ruin my life. It didn't ruin my reputation. It just became a story, which I'm telling you today. But if there's anything to take away from this is that maybe, just maybe, you shouldn't be too excited to write someone's name on the board. Because sometimes they don't just argue, they square up.